Hello and welcome to our webinar. Our webinar today is titled SGNA Approver Unit Application Updates 2014. My name is Cindy Freese and I'm the Associate Executive Director of Clinical Affairs for the SGNA. By means of disclosure, we would like to present that the SGNA is accredited as a provider of continuing nursing education by the ANCC's Commission on Accreditation. The relationships with commercial interest organizations whose products are related to program content include none. Now, while this presentation does not have CNE, we wanted to provide you with an example of what you would need for a CNE presentation, and disclosure is certainly one of them. The purpose of our presentation today is to provide highlights of the SGNA Approver Unit CNE application updates. Our objectives are to review the updates to the SGNA Approver Unit process and application for nursing contact hours. Now, since our inception, the SGNA has had a commitment to competency, and through that we've maintained an approver and a provider unit accreditation through the ANCC, which is the credentialing arm of the American Nurses Association. We require SGNA regions to provide 6 contact hours annually to maintain their charter, and we designate headquarters staff specifically to approver and provider unit functions. At the core of our approver unit is CPIRG, and that acronym stands for the Continuing Education Peer Review Group. CPIRG consists of volunteer peers who review applications for contact hour approval, and they look specifically at content. We designate 3 CPIRG reviewers to review each program application. The ANCC's Commission on Accreditation develops the standards and requirements for nursing contact hour programs. And as we are accredited through the ANCC's Commission on Accreditation, we are obligated to follow the standards. All of the standard updates that we're going to be going over through this webinar have been created by the American Nurses Credentialing Center. Now let's look at some of the overall criteria changes. The highlights of the changes include that the Program Planning Committee will provide information, resources, or evidence-based references to support the learner's need for the activity. Previously, we would just need to provide information that a needs assessment was done. And now you're going to need to be providing additional information to support the fact that this education is needed and is needed by your participants. Another big change is with conflict of interest. Conflict of interest now requires reporting of the qualified members to review and attest to any possible conflict of interest for planners and presenters. Another highlight is in that the gaps in knowledge are addressed. We're going to be looking at if there is a gap in practice, or if there's a gap in knowledge. Those items will need to be addressed. And another big change is in terms of compliance and disclosure. Compliance and disclosure were always part of ANCC criteria and part of the application process, but now there's additional information that needs to be provided, and again, the process has been more refined. Okay, now let's look at some basic questions in regards to the application process. Who can apply? What do I need to apply? And when should I apply? Well, SGNA regional societies and providers whose subject matter is related to gastroenterology, GI nursing, and endoscopy are the groups that can apply to the SGNA Approver Unit. What do I need to apply? You need access to the SGNA online application. And when should I apply? Completed applications should be received at SGNA headquarters at least 42 days prior to the start of your program. And this would be 6 full weeks, at least 42 days by the start of your program. This is one of the other big changes with the application. If we receive it less than 42 days, we will not accept your application. Okay, let's look at some of the changes in further detail. On your mark, get set, let's look at the revisions. Application types. This is new. The application type will need to be indicated. And this is a series of checkboxes. Is the session provider directed or provider paced? A provider-directed activity is one in which the provider or the presenter is the person that has developed the program and is directing the education, is providing the education. Some examples of this would be a lecture or a live webinar, because the provider is pacing the program, they're providing the information. Or is it a provider-directed or learner-paced program? And in an activity like this, again, the presenter or the provider has created the content for the program, but it's a self-study, for example. It's a program where the learner is pacing the education, and they can do it whenever and however long it takes for them to do it. So you would just need to indicate your application type. The application components are generally the same. The only difference is some of the names are a bit different. So, for example, for the first item on this slide, it's called demographics, and previously it was called contact person. So that's really the big change. But again, the components have stayed essentially the same. Target audience and needs assessment. This question is not new, but the responses for this question were revised. So the question is, how is the need for this activity assessed? And you're going to be checking all that applied. Did you survey or request input from the stakeholders, target audience, learners, managers, or subject matter experts? Did you review the evaluation summaries of previous educational activities? Did you review performance improvement activities to identify opportunities for improvement? Or did you review the literature, the trends in literature, law, and healthcare? So you might have found that there were a few of these items that helped you to assess the need for this activity. So you would just be checking off what it was that got you to know that this is what needed to be included in your presentation. The next revision. This is a new question, and again, this is related to the gaps in knowledge. So the question is, the findings from the needs assessment indicated, and again, you're going to check all that apply, the gaps in knowledge, the gaps in skills, and the gaps in practice. So what was it, what gap did you see in the needs assessment that brought you here? And again, you're just going to be checking off as many as were true. And the next question related to this is a text field where you're going to be indicating the gaps in knowledge, skills, or practice, whatever it was you checked off, are related to what areas. Were they related to reprocessing? Were they related to a specific disease process? What was it? And really, you're looking at some of the objectives for your. You're not going to be listing the objectives, but you are going to be listing some general areas that that were indicated in the gaps. Okay, this is a new question. This question is specific to the content of the program. And the question is the content of this program evidence-based or based on the best available evidence? The answer, you're going to be marking off yes or no. And if you mark off yes, some examples are, and there's certainly other ones, are that's related to evidence-based practice, literature or peer-reviewed journals, clinical guidelines, best practices, content experts, expert opinions, or no. And if the answer to this is no, you're going to need to indicate why the content of your program is not evidence-based or based on the best available evidence. I would give you a hint. You're going to want to mark yes to this question. Okay, moving along, we're looking at participant information. This is the same question as was on the previous application, but the responses were revised. And the question is, how will you verify attendance at this activity? And will you be doing that through sign-in sheets, through a computer login, or through another means? And if you are going to check off another means, you'll just describe what that means was. To note, when you're looking at the sign-in sheets, this method needs to include the name of the participant and a unique identifier, something that's going to give you additional information. Sometimes people have very similar names, so that's why you need the unique identifier. And that could be anything from a phone number, an email address, a nursing license number, whatever the case is. The key point to this criteria is that you have a unique identifier. And there is on the supplement page of the CE Approver Unit website, there is a sample roster that you can look at to give you an indication of what needs to be on the sign-in sheets. Okay. Again, this is a question that is already on the application, but some of the responses have been revised. And the question is, what will successful completion of this educational activity be based on? Will it be based on attendance at the entire event or session, or will it be based on partial credit, which is based on partial attendance at the event or session? And the second choice is more generally used for longer programs. If you have a 2 or 2.5 day big program, sometimes folks are only able to attend one session or 1 day's worth of sessions, and so that's what that would look like. Okay, now we're going to be looking at the planners and presenters. Again, this is a similar question as to what is currently on the application, but the responses have been updated. So the question is, identify the role in this activity by checking the appropriate role below. Is this person the nurse planner? Is this person a content expert? Are they faculty, presenter, or author? Are they a content reviewer? Do they have another role? And if they do have another role, you do need to indicate what their role is. A couple of things to think about in this question. The nurse planner, for every application, you know that there does need to be at least 2 people on your planning committee. You need to have at least 2 people on your planning committee, and 1 person needs to serve as the nurse planner. And the nurse planner is the person that's going to be the main contact and the person that's going to assure that all ANCC criteria are followed. As we work through the application, we work with just 1 person, and that person would be the nurse planner. Okay. Additional demographic information, you're going to be indicating, and this is for the biographical conflict of interest form, you're going to be indicating the person's, the planner or presenter's name with their degree and credentials. If they're an RN, you're going to identify through these checkboxes what their degree is. Do they have an associate's degree, a diploma, a baccalaureate degree, a master's degree, a doctorate degree, and you're just going to be marking off the checkbox. What is their preferred address? Their street and their city and state and zip. What is their preferred phone, and what is their email address? What is their position, their present position and the employer? What's the employer city and the employer state? And all of these areas will need to be checked off. There's a question regarding the expertise of planners. Okay, and this is specific to the planning committee. This question asks, you to identify the area of expertise specific to the educational activity listed above. If they're a planning committee member, select the area of expertise specific to the educational activity listed. So again, is this person the nurse planner, the person that's responsible for ensuring adherence to ANCC criteria? Are they a content expert, or do they have another role? You're also going to describe the expertise and years of training specific to the educational activity listed above. Now, all planners and presenters do need to identify this expertise and years of training. And also, for planning committee members, you do need to indicate what is your experience as a program planner. Okay, next, in terms of expertise for the presenters, the faculty, the authors, or the content reviewers, you're going to identify the expertise specific to the educational activity. Okay, and you're going to be describing the expertise and years of training specific to the educational activity. And I will give you a hint. For this section, when we're asking you to list the expertise and years of training, it's really not going to be enough to just put GI nurse or GI physician. Okay, the expertise does need to be specific to the educational activity. So for example, if a presenter is giving an educational session on infection prevention, there should be something in the description that indicates that he or she has expertise in that area. Okay, we are still on the biographical data form. In conflict of interest form, there's additional information regarding conflict of interest. Now, every person, every planner and presenter needs to indicate their conflict of interest, whether it be actual, potential, or perceived. Okay, so this question asks or speaks to each individual who's in the position to control the content of the continuing education activity must disclose all relevant relationships with any entity in a position to benefit financially from the success of the CE activity, and that would include all planners and presenters. So the question is there an actual, potential, or perceived conflict of interest for yourself or for a spouse or partner related to the CNE activity? So it's not just the presenter or the planner themselves, it's their spouse or partner as well. So there's different categories here. If there is a conflict of interest, you're going to check the category that the conflict occurs in. Are they, for example, looking at the categories, is there a salary relationship? Are they receiving a royalty from the commercial interest? Do they own stock? Are they on the Speakers Bureau? Are they a consultant? Is there some other role that they play with a commercial interest? And then you're going to provide a description. Okay, and sometimes for some planners and presenters there may be more than one. So you are going to identify that. Okay, and finally, on the biographical conflict of interest form, this is new as well. You're going to be providing a statement of understanding for conflict of interest. So this is the attestation statement or the statement of understanding, and this says that the X, marking an X in the box below, serves as the electronic signature of the individual completing this biographical conflict of interest form, and attests to the accuracy of the information given above. So when you mark the X in the electronic signature and providing the date and providing your name and credentials, you're stating that all of the information that's on the bio form is correct. And that's a new step. Okay, let's take a minute to keep our calm and take deep and cleansing breaths, because there are a lot of changes to the application, and I can tell you that we just went through a big bulk of those changes with the biographical conflict of interest form. That's going to be, we realize that that's going to take quite a bit of time to gather that, that information. So just know that we've gone through a big chunk of those changes. So let's continue. The activity documentation form, the activity documentation has not changed significantly, which is good. And even though it hasn't, it's always a good opportunity to go through what is necessary on this form. So let's just briefly look at what is included in activity objectives. In your activity objectives, these are defined learner outcomes. They're to be written in measurable terms, and the acceptable terms are included in the guidelines, and you can download the guidelines on the web page. Your content needs, each objective must have related and appropriate content. The content should appear in a list format, not as objectives. It should appear as a list. So for example, if you have 4 objectives, you should have 4 lists of content. Okay, looking at time frames, we want to see that the time allotted is appropriate for content. Just a reminder, 1 contact hour is equal to 60 minutes, and remember that fractions are rounded down, not up. For presenters, each objective must have a presenter indicated, and for teaching strategies, the teaching methods that are listed should be appropriate for the objectives and the content. So a quick example, our objective is to describe how to obtain an application for contact hours from the SGNA. The content is the online application, the time frame is 5 minutes, the presenter is C. Fries, and the method is lecture and slides. Our second objective is to name the resources available during the application process. Number 1, live support feature. Number 2, the nurse planner. Number 3, the notes from this course. The time frame would be 10 minutes, the presenter would be C. Fries, and this teaching strategy would be lecture and slides. Okay, looking at compliance and disclosure. Now there's going to be more specific information on compliance and disclosure with the revised application. So the question is there commercial support or sponsorship for this activity? And the answers are either yes or no. If there is commercial support or sponsorship, you're going to need to download the applicable agreement form. And both of these forms are available on the SGNA website. Our suggestion is that you take a look at those forms as you start, once you begin planning your activity. If you think that commercial support or sponsorship will be something that you'll be seeking to obtain, you're going to want to take a look at the agreement just so you know what type of information you need to have moving forward. The commercial support agreement and the sponsorship agreement will need to be completed before final approval can be granted. And also note that both parties do need to sign the agreements. And by the 2 parties specifically, I mean a representative of the planning committee. So it could be your nurse planner, it could be another member of your planning committee, and also it'll need to be signed by a representative of the commercial interest entity or from the sponsor. So those 2 signatures will need to appear on the agreements. Okay, and additionally, disclosure. Will disclosure be made to all program participants prior to the CNA activity? And the answer is going to be yes, or it's going to be no. And also to note, important to note, there is a required disclosure form that again is also available on the SGNA website. You will want to download that form so that you know what types of information will need to be disclosed prior to the start of the activity. Okay, this is new as well, marketing materials. Marketing materials will be required and more specific information will be needed. Okay, the SGNA approver unit will need to review your marketing materials, and the following information will need to be included in your materials. And that includes the title of your program, the presenter's name and credentials, the date, the location, the provider of the CNE event. And the provider could be the name of the region, the hospital, whatever nonprofit organization is presenting the session. The contact person's name and contact information, and the contact hours, or the numbers of contact hours pending, and of course the SGNA accreditation statement. It's important to note that if there's commercial support or sponsorship for the session, for the CNE event, the following statement must appear on marketing materials. And the statement says, there's commercial support or sponsorship for the program provided by, and you're going to list the name of the commercial interest or sponsor, and it's provided in the form of blank. Perhaps they provided an in-kind donation. Perhaps they provided an unrestricted educational grant. Maybe they gave you money for your food and beverage. Whatever the case is, you're going to list it on your marketing materials. And again, this is new information, so you do want to take a look at the marketing materials requirement or template that's available on the website. This question is now included in the application, and it's in regards to the denial of previous applications. The question is, has the applicant ever been denied approval by or had approval suspended or revoked for an individual activity by the SGNA approver unit or by another accredited provider? Is the answer no, or is the answer yes? And if the answer is yes, you're going to need to provide the following information. What was the date of the denial? What was the action? Was the presentation denied, or was the application denied? Was it suspended? Was your accreditation or was your recognition revoked? And then you're going to provide a brief description of what occurred. Okay, co-provided courses. There's more specific information on co-providing courses. And the question is, co-providing is when an applicant provides the educational activity with another organization. The co-providing organization may not be a commercial interest or sponsor. And again, you want to refer to the guidelines for additional information. No, I am not. The answers are no, I'm not co-providing this program. And if the answer is yes, that you are co-providing the program, we'll need to know the name of the co-providing organization. And again, if you answer yes, you'll be contacted by the approver unit for additional information. There's a new question specific to the use of the evaluation. And this question is very brief. The evaluation form will be used to, and again, it's a series of checkboxes. Will it be used to provide feedback to the presenters? Will it be used to plan for future programs? Or will it be used for another purpose? So you're just going to be checking off one or more of those boxes. The evaluation, there haven't been major revisions to the evaluation. The template has been streamlined a bit, and there's also the addition of 2 new questions. And those questions are, my practice will change after having participated in this activity. And the second new question is, this presentation was free from bias due to conflict of interest, commercial support, or sponsorship and product endorsement. And of course the answers are yes and no. If the answer is no, we ask that the participant explain what occurred. Okay, the certificate of completion. Again, no major changes with the certificate of completion, but always a good idea to review. The certificate is awarded at the completion of the program and includes the title and date of the activity, the name and address of the provider of the activity, and also to note, this is a minor change, you can use a web address now. So if it's, for example, if it's a regional program and your region has a web address that people can access, you can include that instead. The number of contact hours awarded, the space for the participant's name, an authorized signature, and the accreditation statement, which appears here in the text box. And finally, there's some additional items that need to be retained on file. And this is not a different question, but it's been revised a bit. And the statement that's going to be checked off is, I agree to maintain the following documents for 6 years. These forms may be accessed only to authorized individuals and available to the SGNA approver unit upon request. And the items that need to be retained are the completed application packet, which includes the biographical data and conflict of interest forms, your activity documentation form, your commercial support or sponsorship form, your evaluation, your certificate of attendance, the copy of your marketing materials, and that could be your brochure, agenda, announcement, whatever it is, and the final approval with the number of contact hours awarded. And of course, you will want to have your actual application on file as well to refer to. For post-activity, your post-activity will include your roster of attendees, the completion of the certificate of completion that was awarded to the participants, and a summary of the evaluations. And remember that post-activity is due at SGNA headquarters 30 calendar days following the program, and it can be done quarterly if it's a learner-paced program. The SGNA, the post-activity will include the SGNA approver unit identification number, a typed list of the participants, and we ask that you please include the total number of participants on the list, a completed certificate of completion, and the summary of evaluations. Okay, so let's look at some tips. As you move forward with sending in your application on the revised application, just a couple of things to remember. You want to share the information from these slides with your program planning committee and with your presenters. We are recording it and making it available for you so that you can go back to it as many times as you feel, and also to serve as an additional resource for you. You want to start the application process early. Remember that applications are due 42 days prior to the start of your activity, so you're going to want to start your process early. Take a look at the supplemental documents so that you know what needs to be included. Some of the documents that you're going to want to especially take a look at are the commercial support agreement, the sponsorship agreement, the biographical data conflict of interest forms, the marketing material template, and the required disclosures. Take a look at all of that so that you know what type of information you're going to need to gather to complete your application. Additionally, one of the new things that we have in the guidelines that you will see, that you'll be able to retrieve from the website, is an example program. So we put together an example program, soup to nuts, so that you can see what a completed application should look like, and that will be available to you also. If you have any questions as you're going through your application development, please don't hesitate to contact me or Sophie at SGNA headquarters, and certainly if we're not available, any of the other staff members will be able to help you as well. Thank you so much for your attention today. We hope that this information has been helpful to you, and we look forward to working with you on your next CNE application. Thanks so much for your time.